Right now, next up, we have Walk in Your Excellence with Sean Larry Stevens, who is a principal of Newark Collegiate Academy, which is a KIPP charter school. And his work as an educational leader is centered around social justice, school reform, youth empowerment, and the Black male identity. So let's give it up for him.
All right. Thank you, Ezra, for that intro. And first and foremost, I just want to thank the Cedarmore Corporation for this amazing opportunity to be in this space. My good friend Dexter sent me an invite for this, and I appreciate all the work that everybody's doing in this community, especially our Black law enforcers. And secondly, to everybody who's on this call, who's dedicated their Saturday morning, afternoon to come to this space of healing, to seek inspiration, hope, etc. And so I hope to leave you with some gems and tell you a little bit about my life and the work that I do, and try to create a more asset-based narrative to who we are as Black men. I'm a storyteller, and so I start many of my presentations, speeches, keynotes with an excerpt from a poem that I wrote many years ago. It's called "They Said." You want to know what they said? I'll tell you what they said. I didn't believe them, but the thoughts still linger throughout my head. They said I'll either end up in prison, on drugs, or I'll end up dead. I know it's hard to believe to see this man stand before you today, but let me just tell you, life was not always this way. And so before I jump into what I want to share with you today and hopefully leave you with something to think about, I'll take a second to introduce myself so you understand the lens that I'm speaking from as an educator, as a young Black male educator working with urban youth. My name is Sean Larry Stevens. I'm a Cornell University graduate. I have a double degree in biology and Spanish literature, double minor in education, African American, Latino studies. And so I've served throughout my career as a Spanish teacher, a math teacher, a special education teacher, assistant principal. And when I was 24 years old, I became a principal. And for the last 7 years, I have been in that role. Currently the principal of a high school. And so I love connecting with young men and women who are between the ages of 14 and 18 and catching them at that last point in their life before they go off to college. I have 2 master's degrees, 1 in politics, and in just 10 months, I will be graduating with my doctorate. And so I share my formal education with you only because I want to launch with this idea that you must always be learning and knowledge is power, but it doesn't always come in a sense of a formal degree, right? I love the institution of schooling. I love more so the schooling of life. And I think like as Black men, that is where we get most of our first life lessons. So my desire is always to know more. And I think right now as young Black men, we need to be walking in that idea. Some of my first lessons came when I was watching my mother do drugs. My mother's a heavy drug addict and my father was a drug smuggler in Puerto Rico. And so my first life experiences were really learning about why it is that we were in the situation that we were in. Growing up in the hood, I'm one of 9 siblings. I have 8 brothers and sisters, and my grandmother raised me. And so even the lessons that I learned from her at a very young age, of her stories of the civil rights movement, that's all the sort of knowledge that I learned before I even started to gain formal knowledge in schooling. And so I think that during this very critical time of political and social unrest, it's important that as Black men, we know exactly what's going on every day in this country. It's time for us to watch the news. It's time for us to learn how to decipher what news is accurate versus what's not. It's time for us to be the capital bearers of this knowledge, of this accurate information so that we can put it out into the atmosphere. And so I think it goes without saying that in this country, there's a deficit-based lens through which this society see young Black men, right? Or men in general, Black men in general. We are drug dealers, we are deadbeat dads. The world paints us in the media as hoodlums and thugs. Education institutions, especially those led by white folk, view us as young men as aggressive or apathetic towards education. To the world, we are uneducated, we are plagued by mass incarceration, and we are a threat. But this day and age, to everyone who's listening on this call, it is no time like today to truly embody this lifestyle that I want to talk to you about called Walk in Your Excellence. It is a philosophy that I created back in 2018. So in 2016, my older brother was murdered in Jersey City, New Jersey. And just 2 years ago, right before Christmas, my little brother was murdered in Jersey City, New Jersey. And I literally had to go into the bodegas where I grew up in my own neighborhood and beg the store owners to let me see the video so that I could identify if this was my brother. Watching him get shot 4 times, watching his body lay in the cold winter cement for 12 minutes before any ambulance, any police, or anybody in the city actually came to his aid. And it was out of that pain that I started a movement called Walk in Your Excellence. I started a podcast called Walk in Your Excellence so that I could start showcasing Black people, particularly Black men who were doing amazing things in this world in order to create a more an asset-based narrative to who we are as Black men. We are not just drug dealers. We are not just in jail. We are fathers. We are brothers. We are role models. We are mentors. We are educators. We are doctors, lawyers. We are artists. We are trendsetters. We are entrepreneurs. We are so much more than what society paints us to be. We are more than statistics. And now more than ever, we need ourselves, Black men, to recognize that we belong, that we have earned and deserve a seat at all tables, to recognize our power and our greatness, and to walk in our excellence. And so at the end of every one of my podcasts, I share this phrase that I now have tattooed on my body because it's more than just a phrase for me, it's a way of life. I say, define who you are, follow your passion, speak your truth, be unapologetically you, and always remember to walk in your excellence. And so I want to break those down because it means something different to everybody. And then I'll open up the floor for some questions. And so the first piece is defining who you are. During this time, I want everyone listening on this call to recognize that you have the power to define who you are and no one else does. We are not defined by what society tells us. We're not defined by what institutionalized oppression has portrayed us to be. We particularly in the Black Lives Matter movement, we need to define who we are, put a stake in the ground, and let that be the way that you lead. We need disruptors, right? And so I think a lot of the conversations that I'm in right now, it's like, should we be protesting? Should we be in politics? Like, what should we be doing right now? And my answer for all of us is that we need all the things. We need disruptors who are on the ground protesting nonviolently, and we need disruptors who are up in the hill, right? Dismantling the institutionalized oppression that plagues our people from the top down. Right. And so I waver between the two. Yesterday in Harlem, I went to a protest, right? But I also recognize that when things get crazy at a protest, it's not going to do my 1,000 Black kids any justice if I'm locked up or I'm the next hashtag, right? And so as you navigate defining who you are, know that it's okay to be multiple things in this movement. We need healers. I talk a lot about this idea of healers. We need Black men who are doctors, who are literally healing the people who are out here protesting but get hurt by the police. So literally, and we need the healers like Fred Hammond and Kirk Franklin, which was such a magical moment if you had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to watch the spiritual journey that they put us on to make sure that we had some healing in this time of need. We need storytellers. I define myself as a storyteller. One of my good friends, Sean King, was actually the keynote speaker at my graduation last week. And so we need people like him spreading the news and the accurate information and advocating from the top down. We need DeRay McKesson, who is another good friend of mine, who is doing such great social justice work. We started in the classroom together, and to see this man become who he is, speaking life and inspiring people to this level it shows the resilience of who we are as Black people. This country was built on the backs of our people for free, right? And so there are moments in history where we were just surviving, and there have been moments when we are thriving. And right now, we are in this little episode where we are just surviving and trying to figure out how we propel ourselves to that stage of thriving, but know that we will get there. So the first part of walking in your excellence is truly defining who you are and not allowing anybody else to make that decision. The second piece is following your passion and speaking your truth. As you can tell, I am passionate about educating. This is my 12th year in education. This is my last year as a principal, as I now negotiate and navigate this regional district leader space of whether or not I want to become a chief academic officer, whether or not I want to become a superintendent, or whether or not I want to start my own thing for Black men. And so I'm trying to figure out and define what my passion is, but really what I'm passionate about is creating an asset-based narrative to who we are as Black men. And every day, I get the opportunity to be a Black face in a white space, dismantling these oppressive systems. I am the only Black male high school principal in all of KIPP in this country. We educate 250,000 students. We are in 80 regions across this country. We have 237 schools. We have 35 high schools. And I am the one Black male high school principal in this country in my organization. So every day, I have to navigate these spaces where sometimes we suffer from this idea that W.E.B. Du Bois talks about double consciousness, or Kinde talks about dual consciousness, where we're trying to figure out this balance. And I finally come to terms with my own identity in that it's not about balance, but it's about harmony. And how do I walk into these spaces and still stay true to myself and still be unapologetically myself, which is the fourth phrase in this mantra: be unapologetically you. And so it's oftentimes very fearful to be that person. As Black men, young Black men, as you navigate this world and go into the workforce, you're gonna always feel like this tiptoeing of like, oh, am I coming off too aggressive? Am I being too Black? Like what does that even mean? Be who you are and be unapologetic in that. Like, not living in this space of double consciousness actually propels you to a higher level of leadership. So you don't have to live in this space of stress and anxiety all the time. And I know it's hard, but it is when I truly defined who I was and started to walk in that everything started to fall in place. You have to be confident. The last thing I want to talk to you about is walking in your excellence. And it means something different to everyone. At the end of my podcast, I ask all of my guests, tell us how you walk in your excellence. And out of all the guests I've had of 4 seasons in the last 2.5 years, everyone has said something different. To me, it is a mindset, it is a lifestyle, it is a philosophy. It's less about defining it universally and more about defining it for you. And so, to everyone listening, I just want to let you know that you belong. And I know we're in this space right now where even me, and all that God has blessed me with in my humblest voice, I walk into some of these spaces and I question, is this what God wants me to do? Is this where I need to be? Do I want to be a part of this organization that just only has one Black man in this space? Even though I am navigating a system and I'm infiltrating the system and I'm opening doors and breaking down glass ceilings for other Black men and women to follow in my footsteps to become a principal at 24 years old. I was the second youngest principal in the state of New York, and I've been doing it, and I'm tired, right? But now I'm questioning, like, is walking in my excellence now going, not for this administration, but do I need to be at the White House creating public policy for young Black men and for institutions and to break down the white architects of Black education, because there are so many. But know that you belong. And like, that's the thing I want to leave with everybody. If there's no seat at the table, I'm the first person to tell you, create one, or create your own table. And so always walk in your excellence, guys. As I conclude, I want you to ask yourself this question. I was talking with my grandmother about it recently, just recounting her thoughts from the civil rights movement when she was a part of it. What side of history will you be on? That was my latest podcast episode. And I'm asking that of all people. Will you be the Black man that second guesses themselves? What story will you tell to your children, your grandchildren about this time that you're living in? What part will you play? And the only way that you can do that is by defining who you are, following your passion, speaking your truth, being unapologetically you, and always remembering to walk in your excellence. Thank you.